Listening discretion is advised. This podcast may contain graphic content, triggering themes, adult language, and unapologetic book spoilers. We don't hold back because real stories are gritty, raw, and worth telling. Your mental health matters. There is no shame in seeking help, support, or stepping away when you need to. This is Slow Burn, where we go deep, move slow, and let the fire speak.
Not all monsters are what we expect them to be. Today we're sitting down with Rick London, author of The Dancing Wolfman, who takes the classic werewolf story and trades in the brooding, tortured alpha for something a little more unexpected. Because this isn't just a story about what goes bump in the night. It's about identity, instinct, and a character who doesn't quite fit the mold he's been given. Mystery, humor, romance, and a werewolf who might not be what you think. So today we're talking about rewriting the rules, playing with genre, and what it looks like to tell a story that refuses to take itself too seriously, but still hits where it counts. So get comfortable. This is Slow Burn, where we go deep, move slow, and let the fire speak. So let's get into it. Well, hello. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. What a great intro. I love that intro. That was awesome.
Thanks. So, what first drew you into writing a werewolf story, but differently?
Well, it's rather it'll take me a few minutes to describe that, but
Good.
uh, my intent wasn't to write anything. What it comes from a memory in Super Bowl Sunday, 1998. It's January 25th. I went to a friend's house. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was living about 50 miles from where I'm at now. And in order to get to his house, I had to get off the freeway and take this country road for about 7 miles. Beautiful, right? When I went there, it was still daytime, and it's rolling hills, very green, beautiful. Cow came up to my car. I slowed down to look at this cow, and it came up to my car. It was really cool. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful day. And, we just had some rain, so everything was just green and lush, right? It's beautiful. And so then I went to my friends, watched the Super Bowl, and then Super Bowl always ends around 7:30, close to 8 sometimes, with everything that goes on.
Mhm.
And so on the way back, I drove the same road to get to the freeway, but this time it was dark and eerie, and uh, the light posts, were not close, they were pretty far apart. And so there was low cloud cover, and it was kind of foggy. Perfect setting for a werewolf story, right? For a werewolf setting, right? And as I'm driving, I'm like, man, this would be a great place for a werewolf, right? And it reminded me of a movie. Hopefully, you've seen it, American Werewolf in London, right? I
I've heard
love.
of it. Yeah.
You got to see it if you haven't seen it. So it's my favorite werewolf movie. It's beautiful. It's an older movie. It's from 1979, but it's very violent and gory, but it's great. It's a great movie. And so it reminded me of the beginning of the movie when these two friends are walking in the moors in England, and before they encounter the werewolf. And the werewolf in that movie he's vicious. Um, so that memory stayed with me, of driving that country road. It stayed with me, and in December of 2024, I'm hanging out with some friends on a Friday night, and we're talking about old friends, right? And so then I'm like, hey, I didn't say anything, but it reminded me of that night. And my friend who I went to go see, the Super Bowl with, I hadn't seen him in a while. And so it reminded me. And then all of a sudden, this werewolf pops up again, right? The country road. So then I say goodbye to my friends. As I'm driving home, which wasn't too far, it just kept sticking with me. I'm like, what if a werewolf came out there? It's like a suspension of disbelief, right? As they say for a book. It occurred to me. I'm like, man, I could do something with it, because the idea kept lingering in my head and it wouldn't go away. So I went home and I thought about it. And then the next day I woke up from Saturday morning. It's still in my brain. I could keep going on. And then the next week is still there. And I'm talking, I just talk to my wife. I'm like, hey, I came up with this idea for a story. I'm like, what do you think? And she's like, huh? Interesting. What are you gonna do, right? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I said, let me first try to create cinematic trailers to put on my YouTube channel, but I don't have the skill for that. At the time, um, I tried with AI and other things, programs to do it, but I wasn't quite skilled with it. So then I changed gears, and I'm like, I'm an avid reader. I love to read. I said, hey, maybe I can make this into a book, into a novel. So I looked into how I can do that. And so um, I came up with the outline and everything and for the story. And I had to come up with an idea for a werewolf story. It's like I wanted to do a werewolf story, but I'm like I didn't want to create another werewolf story where it's just the same thing. The guy gets a guy, it's normally a man, meets a werewolf, gets bitten. Later on, the next full moon, turns into a werewolf and becomes this vicious killer. And then he gets hunted, and then he dies, right?
Right.
And I'm like, yeah. So I didn't want that. That's the same premise everywhere. So I'm like, I got to make this different, to make it work. So then at that time, my son, he was 15 at the time. He's taking a music class, and one of his good friends is a trombone player. He coerced my son into trying a trombone. And so my son said, yeah, I'll give it a try. And the wall behind me, if you see the wall behind me there, my son, he brought the trombone home and he put the case back there. And I kept looking at that case while I'm thinking about the story now. And I kept looking at the case. I'm like, hey, you know what? I could incorporate music in the story, do it differently. But I'm like, what can I do? So I thought about it. So I wrote some ideas down. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make my protagonist a high school music teacher by day and a DJ by night, and I'm gonna use music as the driving force that'll keep his sanity while he becomes a wolfman. So when he first transforms, he hears music, and music transforms him back to his regular self, his conscious. He's still a wolfman, but his conscious is back to his normal self, and he's not a killer. So instead of becoming a killer, he becomes a savior. He becomes a protector, and I'm like, hey, that's different. That's totally different than a regular werewolf story, right? Like use music, because to me, mostly everyone I know loves music. It's transformative. It makes changes your mood, gives it's magical. So I'm like, hey, you know what? Music's gonna do the same thing for him, and he's a very morally grounded guy. So when he becomes a werewolf through music, he becomes a morally grounded werewolf. He doesn't. He's not a killer, and because of that, he's able to save the first person he meets instead of killing her. He meets her and she becomes his love interest, and also he meets somebody else who at first looks like an antagonist, but later on he saves that person. So it's just a different take on the werewolf story. I just wanted something different. A lot of people love werewolf stories. I love vampire stories. I love Frankenstein. I love all that stuff. But sometimes it's good to change it up. So hey, I had to give it a different take.
Sometimes it's okay if the villain is the hero, right? Like we always have
Yeah.
these same expectations. So I think it's interesting that you use music in that. I find that music is such a as you said, like healing and calming. I have worked with children with special needs, and when they've become escalated, like music is one of the things that is like de-escalated them. And it's not always like the music you would think, right? Like you would think, oh, let's put on calming music or classical music. Like sometimes it's Eric Church, or sometimes it's um one of my kids asked for Snoop Dogg, like, and I was just like, okay. But I mean, but it's the, sometimes it's the rhythm, sometimes it's the harmonies, sometimes, whatever it is that like speaks to their soul. And, I've done the same thing, with animals when they've seemed dysregulated. I've just like started randomly singing songs, and like certain songs seems to do like certain, like they just, some of them chill out more with certain, different melodies and things. And so to tie that into a story to show what that does to the human psyche, to hear music, and what a beautiful thing music is. And I don't think we give it enough credit, especially in literature. There are so many tropes out there where you have like the rock star or the Juilliard musician or things like that, but never really do we dive deep into the psychological side of, what music does to our brains.
Yeah,
And
exactly. I agree. I agree. Same thing with my character. He's I wrote in the book where music's been in his life since it shaped who he is. Music's been in his life since he was a baby, and I wrote in the book that his dad is a sound engineer and his mom worked at a record shop, so they always had music playing, and he grew up with that, and all their friends and family. Um, always came over and had parties. He learned to dance because everyone that he's around loved music. It was part of their culture, their nature. So he grew up around that. So I had to write it like that, because music's so deep in who he is and his persona. So that's why when he hears music, when he transforms the first time, it changes his consciousness. I just couldn't come up with music all of a sudden
right.
transforms anybody, right? There had to be an angle with that, right? There had to be a gimmick, right? So I had to write it where it's just part of who he is. He's not anyone without music, and yeah, I wholly agree with what you were saying. So music is again, like I said earlier, it's transformative. It's magical. It changes your mood, either enhances it or gives you bad memories. But most of the time, music's a positive experience.
Right.
Yeah. So why not use it in a different for something different? And you're right. I read a lot of. I just read a good book, and I love I love uh, I love hard-boiled detective novels and
Hmm.
spy thrillers and all that. I love all this, but music is never a big part of those books, of those stories. And so, yeah, let's change it up and add something, give it a different element, to an old story. Give it a different element and see where that takes him, right?
Yeah. So I've heard of authors who don't stick with one genre when they're writing, but you've mixed your genres. You went mystery, romance, fantasy, paranormal. How are you taking and balancing all of those elements into one story to keep it cohesive?
I didn't think about that when I was writing it. I just kept writing, right? It just came out naturally. It
Hmm.
came out organically. It's like I had to have a love interest because I'm married. I've been with my beautiful wife for 16, close to 17 years of marriage. Um, you know, and romance is what people love too. You got to have romance. He's got to live for something after he becomes who he is. Friendship. And then the mystery and werewolf is kind of. I didn't want mine to be horror. I don't have any super gory scenes or any gory scenes in the book, or parts of it. um so yeah, and the mystery of what's coming next, right? So I think it just came out naturally as I wrote, right? Maybe it's from reading all those books, over my lifetime, right? It just naturally came out, and it just flowed that way.
Right. So you have like this overarching theme of like not fitting the mold. Is that, I know
Mhm.
you said you didn't want to do like a traditional werewolf, but was it also intentional that did not fit the mold either? Like he's marching to the beat of his own drummer, right? Like he's his
Yeah,
own
yeah.
person through this. So was that an intentional thing, or did the story just kind of, you know, create itself around that?
No, no, that was intentional. That was intentional. High school music. Who would think, right? Werewolf story, a high school music teacher, right?
Right?
Um, and again, I had to make it where music was part of his life, right? So, yeah, high school music teacher who also learned how to become a DJ. Um, you know, and ironically, his last name is Wolf. Becomes a Wolfman, right? That was intentional too. So like I had to come up with a catchy name, but no,
Right?
it was intentional. Somebody different. You don't expect a story of a teacher becoming a werewolf, right? It's usually somebody else. Or uh, I think the last big werewolf movie, it did okay. Some people say it bombed. The Wolfman with Benicio del Toro. He's a aristocrat, right? He comes from aristocratic family. An American Werewolf in London. The guy, they're just two American kids, college kids. exploring England. And but yeah, it's just I had to give something. I came up with intentionally in a way also to connect with the readers, right? I love my teachers. I love my teachers when I was in high school. What would be without our teachers, right? Um, and again, the music element of that as well. So it's like I had to come up with something that people could connect with. So yeah, it definitely was intentional. Yeah.
So, one of the themes that we've talked about on the social media platform here recently is some of the authors I've talked to, as they're writing, they find that they're connecting parts of themselves to their main character. Is there a part of yourself you connect with the most to your main
Yeah,
character?
definitely. I've been asked that before. It's like, sure. Like I said, he's high moral guy. He doesn't cut corners, very set in his ways, but also, open to, open to new ideas. And I'm kind of like that. And I think naturally, when you write about, your protagonist, you're like, yeah, I vicariously live through my protagonist. I would love to be him, but I'm not saying that I'm like the most morally grounded guy. I am moral. I have my good qualities in me, and I put that in him. So yeah, he's definitely part of me.
Was there something as the story took shape that ended up meaning more to you than you expected it to as you were writing?
Yeah, the romantic part, and actually, I have a favorite part in the book too. That really surprised me. I'm really proud of a certain moment in there. And then I came up with another twist later on in the book that it just came out as like totally surprising. I'm like, where did that come up with? I came up with I don't know if you've read part of the book, but I came up with a daytime full moon. Because in most of the stories, right, it's always the full moon at night. But I came up with this thing where he's at school teaching, and all of a sudden he starts feeling different. He doesn't transform, but something's wrong, and he goes outside, and there's you ever experience daytime full moon, right? But you don't notice it, right? Because you have to look, you have to find it, right? You have to search for it, and it's right there, and it's like I'm not transforming, but his senses are heightened, and he has this ravenous what do you call it, hunger. He's like he devours food, and in the next several hours I put on there how he just inhales food because he's so hungry. It's like that those primal instincts are in there, but he doesn't transform because then the readers are like, well, why does he transform? Because the power to transform comes from the light of the full moon at night.
Mhm.
um and it's funny, a lot of the wolf stories, it's the full moon that transforms, right? But it never explains why the power of the full
Yeah,
moon
why
does it, right?
why
it's
the
just
moon?
it's just implied, right? It's just implied. Yeah.
Right.
So I just threw another little twist for people to think. It's like, oh, he doesn't turn into a wolf, but he's like he feels like one, right?
So, are you getting any pushback from other authors or readers about how your genre um delving or twisting or forking off from the road? Like, are you getting any like feedback from them that says, no, you have to choose, like you have to pick?
No, not at all. Not at all. People saw most people are like, "Wow, that's very interesting. You came up with a different angle to the story." I'm like, I like it. It's just yeah, it throws them off. Yeah, because I know some people are really set, right? And
Right.
it's like, "Oh, how dare you do that to the Wolfman?" It's like, what do you mean, how dare me? It's like there's nothing set in stone. There's nothing set in
Right.
stone about any character, right? Um,
Right.
it's like it's 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 like superhero movies, right? They changed it up all the time. Like that show on Amazon, right? The Boys, right?
Yeah.
It's
Hmm. Where the
it's about
superheroes are
these guys
bad.
who are empowered, right? They have they're super, but they're evil inside. They're actually bad guys, right?
Right.
They
Right.
just they smile at at people, but inside, they're evil, right? It's like people could say the same thing about it. It's like, how dare you change a superhero into a villain? It's like, hey, well, you got to try something new, give people something else to think about.
I think when you do that, it gives us like a different perspective, right? Like a more well-rounded look at how these characters are or how they develop, right? Like it's not I don't think anything is ever really black and white. There's so many gray areas in between everything. And I think this is really hitting that gray area where not not everything has to be, you know, the bad side of it. And don't get me wrong, I like a good villain story. Like I enjoy a good, you know, crimson flag like the rest of them, but like I also love somebody who has a good redemption arc to it, right? Like who comes out
Yeah.
of it the other side and they're like, this is not who I'm going to be and this is not what I'm going to do and this is not, you know, I'm not going to let this take over and I'm not going to do these things. So I mean, I think that gives something to readers too as part of just that self exploration piece. Like being that, because as a reader, and I'm a heavy reader. I don't remember the last time I turned on my TV or the last time I went to a movie or it's music or a book around here. And so typically
I like
speaking,
you. I like you a lot. I like that.
and so typically, right, I'm sitting here and I look at it, and as I'm reading, it's very much like we see these bad guys who, you know, are okay being bad and they just want to be bad, or we see this. But when I read, I like to feel the emotion. I want to feel the secondhand embarrassment. I want to feel excited when he asks the girl out. I want, like I want all these like little things with it. So to have the main character say, you know what, screw this, I'm not gonna be the villain, I'm not gonna be the bad guy, I'm not gonna do these things, then I feel like that just helps on like an independent level too. So I can sit there and be like, I don't, I mean, to go real deep with it, it's like, well, I don't have to like repeat cycles that my family did, or I don't have to keep this job that makes me miserable, or I don't have to be traditional about anything, right? Like I think that
Yeah.
that's just one more reason.
Yeah.
Um so
Yeah.
it's
It's like I have a villain in my book. It's just not the werewolf. Would be great. Would be great is get readers and all other authors come. It's like, man, I'm cheering for your werewolf. I love him. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, and it's the he's like he becomes a folk hero. That's my intention. Make him into a folk hero, not a superhero. He's not gonna wear a cape or anything. He's just somebody who's just different, right? And that's how
right.
life is. You were just saying that in so many ways. Life is about change. It's about different. Uh, exploring and experiencing different things in life. Because you never know what's going to happen any day, right? You wake up, yeah, you go to work and you drive usually the same route and but you never know what life's going to throw at you. So why not put that in the book? Put something different, put something that you don't expect. And and if there are people out there, you're right, that are just set in their ways and they don't, they don't like things, but that's because maybe they're they don't like change. But life's not like that, right? At least not for me. At least a lot of my friends and people I know, life's about change, and I think books and film reflect that in so many ways. That's why I love reading and I love movies, and because it makes you think, it makes you wonder. It's like what's next, right? Again, that's why I came up with a different story. I didn't want my story to be the same, and then what would be the point of that? Uh, so yeah,
So you just finished
give it
mentioned you
something new.
finished reading something. What did you just finish reading? What is the book on your
Well,
uh
I love. I don't know if you ever heard of Michael Connolly. He writes. He writes. He was a L.A. Times reporter way back in the day, and he came up with this character, Harry Bosch, right, a hardboiled detective in L.A., a homicide division in Hollywood, and he's written like 20, 30 books with him, as his protagonist. Um, and then later on, he introduced. There's a movie called The Lincoln Lawyer that came out with Matthew McConaughey
Mhm.
back in like 2005. He wrote
Yeah.
that too and got adapted for film. In the stories, Mickey Haller, the lawyer, is Harry Bosch's half brother through their father. And so the story I just read is called Resurrection Walk. And actually, I was 2/3 of the way of the book, and then last night I couldn't put it down. I wanted to get to the end, so I stayed up till like two in the morning reading this book. Right, I wanted to finish it. It was so good, and I just love that stuff. I love Michael Connolly. I love they adapted the Harry Bosch into a series on Amazon.
Okay.
It's just called Bosch, and
Okay.
then there's also Jonathan Kellerman, who's also written. His protagonist is a child psychologist whose best friend is a LA detective, and they come up against these vicious killers. Um, and then also Lee Child, Reacher, that's also on Amazon. Spy thrillers. This one I got into last year, an author by the name of Mark Greaney writes about
Okay.
this guy called the Gray Man. They made a movie about that. I heard the movie wasn't too good, and I don't have Netflix. It's on Netflix. They made it with I think Ryan Gosling and I forget who else. Um, what's his name from the Avengers movie? He plays uh, Captain America. I can't think of his name right now. Um, and just
Chris
so many authors,
Evans?
in the past. What's his? I can't think of his
Was it
name.
Chris Evans?
Chris Evans, yeah, Chris
Yeah.
Evans. Thank you. So Chris Evans and Ryan Gosling, right? They made this movie, and I love spy thrillers. I love Daniel Silva. His protagonist is an Israeli Mossad agent. I just love all kinds of different stuff. David Baldacci. I just read the book that I just read before this one. Dan Brown. He wrote this book, The Secret of Secrets. I read that as well. Just little different stuff. I don't read romance so much. I read books that have romance in it. That's why I put romance in my book. You know,
I
because I can't.
I like sometimes it's
What
too
were you gonna say?
much. I said sometimes it's too much, but I like John Grisham and James Patterson and
Oh,
Dan
yeah, I love that
Brown.
stuff.
Those are
Yeah.
great ones. I think one of my favorite things about James Patterson is that he has those short chapters. And
Mm-hmm.
so when my son was younger, like he's almost 20 now, so like but when he was younger and I needed to get to like a quick like stopping spot, right? Because the chapters were only, 4 and 5 pages long, I'd be like, okay, I can read this chapter really fast while he's doing this, and then I felt like I accomplished something because I was like, oh, I read 2 chapters tonight. Where in some of my books, I'm like, it was 22 pages long in that chapter and it was never over. So I was just like, but those were, really good reads. I loved like the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons. I really like anything that makes me think or feel
Yeah.
or, gets my brain working. My mom, she doesn't necessarily read for as much detail. Like I just pick up details because that's just how my brain works. And so like she never could get into the Da Vinci Code because she was like, there's too many things happening. I don't know, like because every other chapter you were somebody else or something else, or and I was like, oh, I loved it. And she's like, yeah, no, I have no idea what's happening. So I was like, that's fair. But like I liked the Alex Cross.
I
Um
love that stuff.
yeah.
Alex Cross, yeah, and he also wrote the Women's Murder Club too. James Patterson, those ladies. It's set in San Francisco.
Nice.
Love that stuff. Yeah, and I love books with those short chapters. You're right. It's like it's nice because you can stop right and go do something,
Mhm.
or come back
Yeah.
later. And then also there's other authors that write long chapters to get you to like, oh, I can't stop in the middle of this. I got to read the whole chapter,
Right,
right?
right. You
And
keep
then by the
going. You
time
gotta
by the time you know it, you have to go to sleep, right? It's time to go to bed, right? So
Yeah.
it's different, but they both work. They both work.
Yeah.
It keeps keeps you immersed in the book. It's like, oh no, I gotta, like yesterday, like last night, I was like, oh man, I gotta finish this book. The first book I read of Michael Connolly, it was my wife. She works in medical, and a doctor gave her this book. 'Cause she told him that that I love to read detective novels. So she lent her this book for me called Echo Park. And I think it's from 2006. Oh my God, I read that book in like the first two chapters. I was hooked, and I was like, oh, okay, I just gotta keep reading. I love that stuff, right? And I just kept reading more. And then I went back to his first book and the second. I kind of read them in order. Um, and then I just fell in love. I found other authors that have this stuff, like I said, Jonathan Kellerman and
Mhm.
others, Lee Child, and I just love that stuff.
I think I've read the first couple of the Jack Reacher series,
I love that stuff.
and I
Yeah.
feel like I've read the Jason Bourne. I don't remember.
Jason, I read but it's funny. I read the first three books of him.
Mhm.
I think it's Robert Ludlum, right?
Okay.
The Jason Bourne, but the books are totally different than the movies.
And
They're
see, that's
set
why I
way
don't
back
watch it.
before. Yeah, they were set way back before, right? No, is it no? Is it John Le Carre or is it Robert? I think Robert Ludlum wrote the Bourne series, and then you have John Le Carre. He wrote spy novels, famous spy novels. He wrote the famous spy novels of MI6, George Smiley.
Okay.
They made that movie, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and then they had a series on BBC for many years back in like the 80s. Yeah, there's so many great books out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just makes you think, right? Words make for me, words just, it's like I have to visualize what I'm reading. So it's a great exercise for my brain, right?
Right.
Take those words, then poof, put the scene together, right? Put the clues together. And I love all those writers that I told you about because they're so good. The reason why they're so good, because a lot of times, most of the time, the bad guys, they were right in front of you and you never know it to the end. And you're like, how in the heck did I miss that? Well, that's why they write it the way they do, right? And then then you go through the next book and you're like, okay, I'm gonna figure it out. And it's like you can't,
You gotta
it's like
know who
you
did
have an idea, but you still don't get it, right?
it. Right. Oh, who is it? Oh, I don't go and watch movies that were based on books, and my mom refuses to go with me now because the last time we went to a movie based on a book, I complained the whole time, and I was like, "That is not what happened in the book. That is not what he
Which
said."
which one which one was it?
I don't even remember now, but what I was so excited to see it. I remember that it was probably like 10 or 15 years ago now. And I was so excited. And I was like, that's not what happens. That's not what happens. That's not it. Why are they together in the end? They don't get together in the end. He gives her money for her boyfriend, and her and the boyfriend lived. Like, my mom's like, never again. It was just like, that's not how it goes. And so I get really upset about it. And so if I'm gonna watch a movie that's based off of a book, then I'm only gonna watch the movie. Because if I go to the book, I'm gonna be really angry.
No, that's what everybody says. The movies are always different than the book because I believe I believe Hollywood studios, they look at the story and they have to look at it in the perspective of what's going to attract viewers, right? Uh, they look at the story and it's like, they take the good parts out and then they make it into a movie and then they add stuff to it, right? Because it's always about what's going to attract the viewer. And also, I know I mentioned this to somebody too in a previous podcast that they do focus groups, right? And in those focus groups for these movies, they talk about what works, what doesn't, what would you like to see, and so they take all those ideas and they incorporate into the movie. And again, they take out parts of the book. People are always upset that movies are never quite like the book.
They're never, it's wrong.
Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it does work. I would say I don't have the stats in front of me, but at least the movies that I've seen that were adapted from books, I would say most of them work pretty well. There's only been a few that I didn't think that worked really well. Like Michael Connolly, for example, again Michael Connolly, The Lincoln Lawyer, the first one that was really good. I read the book too, and it's close to the book. Then they did this other one where I didn't like the movie at all. They took a book from Michael Connolly, and then the main actor was played by Clint Eastwood. And in the book, the guy's like 20, 25 years younger than Clint Eastwood was at the time when he made the book. I forget what the story was. I think it was based on the Narrows or the Poet, something. But the movie bombed, and I looked at the movies like, God, it's like, why did they get Clint Eastwood? See, Hollywood changed it, right? They needed
Right.
they needed a familiar face, an A-list actor to bring in the audience. But a movie only works too is if you got a great script, you know, great director, you know, um, those two things, right? And a great cast. But if you miscast somebody because they're famous, but he doesn't fit, he doesn't fit quite right, or she fits quite right the character in the book, it's not going to work. So to
Right.
me,
Right.
but there's only a few examples of that. Most movies that I've seen that are adapted, most of them are pretty. They're pretty close. I would say about probably like 2/3. About around 2/3 of the story are accurate. 2/3 of the movies comes from the book, so around there.
I think the other part of that is like we're so ingrained in having a happily ever after. And I love a good
Mhm.
HEA just as much as the next person. I love to see that the two main characters figure it out and they get together and but life is messy. Like life is messy and sometimes it doesn't work. Like sometimes it doesn't. And in some of the books I've read, it doesn't work. But then they try to adapt it into something that they think people want to see. And so then they try to wrap it up in this pretty bow that doesn't exist because that's not how the story ended. The story ended messy. But instead, like Hollywood went and they were like, no, 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 we're going to go ahead and give it, the HEA treatment and put a bow on it and let them know that no, 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 these characters they love so much they're gonna end up together this time. But then that just changes the whole dynamic of the entire process of how the story goes. Or they make it modern when it took place in the 50s, or they, like just
Mhm.
things that like seem so small at the time but take away so many details of how the story was built around. So, I don't know. I'm very picky. I'm very picky about what.
No, you know what? Most of the romance movies have a that have a happily ever after, right? The Princess Bride, right?
Right.
Right? Everybody loves that movie. I've never met anyone who doesn't love that movie, right? It's funny, at the end, happily ever after. What was
But
that?
I've never
Uh,
read it. I think it was a book
yeah,
first. I have
I
not
think
read
so.
it.
Yeah. Then you got three weddings and a funeral, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or four weddings and a funeral, right? That lived happily ever after. Breakfast at Tiffany's, right? That beautiful ending, right? They're kissing in the rain. Um, a lot of movies end up. I think. But yeah, you're right. In real life, that uh, you know what? Like you said, life is messy. It's not, happily ever after to me is, what, being alive, you know,
Right?
um, right? It's just being alive, right? Nothing's ever going to be happily ever after is what you make of it, right? What you do to make your life happy. It's not so much a happy ending. Um, Happy ending is dying at the end and being content with your life, that you gave it your all, right? That's a happy ending to me. It's like, but you're not going to put that in the movie, right? Happy ending is finding your soulmate, right? And being at the end, being happy with, you go through all this turmoil in the movie, and then at the end you end up together. That's a happy ending. But yeah, life is not going to be, you're like, yeah, and I think sometimes they do that to movies, and then they'll make a sequel, and then the sequel sucks, and you're like, "Oh my god, they should have done that,"
Like, what did you
right?
do? I also think that I wish more authors would spend time looking at what happens after the happily ever after, right? There's so many stories where there are so many toxic couples and toxic relationships or toxic work environments or whatever, and you get to the end and somehow it all ties itself up in 32 pages at the very very end and you're like, oh, and now it's perfect and things are wonderful. But as like a realist, I look at that and I'm like, there's no way that's sustainable. Like, I want you to come back in 5 years and say, okay, this is what really happened after, right? Like, they did get sick of each other. They did fight a lot. They did. And I'm not saying that they have to get divorced. I'm not saying, like, but I want it to be real. I want it to look and feel like real life and not always be an escape from what real life is. Though sometimes real life is a dumpster fire, so the escape is great. But just I would love for somebody to go back and be like, okay, this is what happens after the happily ever after. We had 3 kids and we tried to have date night and then the kid got sick and puked on our bed and like because those real things happen. And like
Well, you're right, but I think the reason why Hollywood does that to us, it's like, you know what? We experience that. Movies are to escape from that, right? It's an escape. So you don't, because you're going to experience that. But why put in a movie when you know it's going to happen, right? And again, and it's always about money too, right? you know, people pay money. They want to be entertained. They don't want to. They don't want to go there. It's like, my God, I experience that every day. Why did I pay money to come see this, right? So it's like I experience it every day. So, but yeah, there are movies like that now and then, that are just that stick to what really happens in life. But Hollywood is set on, uh, everybody loves a happy ending or a cliffhanger, right?
right?
Just it's the entertainment part of it, right? It's like that's what they're there for. So, and I hope my movie, I hope someday one of these days it gets discovered, and I would love for my book to get adapted. I think it would be a great movie.
Right.
Of course, that all depends on who gets the story and wants it adapted. But I think
Right.
it's worthy of a movie. I definitely feel that.
Do you have any more ideas for more stories to come out later? Do you have more ideas, more writing projects underway?
Yeah. What I want to do is I have volume 2 and planned out. You know, because my protagonist, he doesn't die. That's the other thing. I didn't want my Wolfman to die. End of story. Right. Again, it'd be another typical Wolfman. So he doesn't die, and neither do the people that he encounters that are close to him. And so I have one planned for that, and then I have one planned for that one, which I want to go into the origins of the Wolfman lore. I've talked to a few people. A lot of the Wolfman lore came from like Eastern Europe, Macedonia, Greece, even further east, right? So I want to go into that, and then I also want to write like 2 prequels of the woman that he becomes his love interest. Write a story of her and the arc of to when they met, and the other guy that he saves who becomes his friend, and write him and the arc, and so the confluence of their meaning, right? And bring that to life. And so that's what 4 books right there. And
Mhm.
then take it from there. But again, I'm working right now. I'm just working on marketing this book, and it takes a while, right? It just got published in December. I've talked to other people. Sometimes it takes a while for books to get discovered, but you got to
Yeah.
keep at it. Um, Fortunately, right now, podcasts are a great medium right now to get your name out and build credibility, because you have to build credibility. People have to know who I am, before I become, a household name, or
Right.
something
Right.
like that, or become known, right? So it takes a while. It takes a lot of work, but I just keep plugging away at it. That's what I'm going to do. So,
Do you
but I
have a
do have
big
I
indie
do have
author?
plans for that.
Do you
What's
have a
that?
big indie author community in your area?
Not yet. Not that I've found one yet. I'm trying. I'm working. I'm sure there is. I've been searching for it. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm sure there is out there. It just takes a while. There's an event coming up at the end of May that I'm attend. It's called the Bay Area Book Fair, and I hope to go there and meet other authors and build a community. And also, I've heard there's a lot of great bookstores too that a lot of authors go and hang out with, that I'm going to work on doing that as well. It takes a lot of work, and I work full time, and finding the time with a wife and son and doing all the other stuff that I have to do. I have to put some effort into it, but it's all worth it. And it just takes time and effort. And but what else do I have to do? I knew what
Well,
I
you
was
make
getting
sense,
into.
right?
Yeah, I knew what I was getting into when I came up with this book. I knew it was going to change a great part of my life, but it's exciting, right? It's like, hey, meet new people and see where that takes me.
Yeah, I love it. I love the fact that you want to keep going with it and that there's more story to tell and that
Absolutely.
you want to dive deep into the lore of the Wolfman. And I'm sure that like if you look into so many different cultures, there's probably a lore under all the cultures. I mean, Native Americans have shifting lore, like you mentioned the Greeks, those in the Far East, like there's so much beautiful lore that we don't talk about enough. Like we look at like your basic werewolves, your vampires, your um
Yeah,
other.
shapeshifters coming from everywhere. Huh? Everybody's got shapeshifters in their cultures, right? So, yeah.
And I mean, some of them were used as like a moral compass, and some of them were used as like to scare children and be like, oh, well, if you do this, then like,
I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say that, right?
But then some of them were saviors, right? Like, not all of them were painted in these pictures of being these awful, terrible things that they've got typed as or typecast as we were writing and reading and putting all these things together. Um, so I look forward to that part of it. I'm kind of like a nerd in that aspect. I really like to get down into like the nitty gritty of where it comes from and why. I'm like a why person. I'm still like a child. Why? Like, just where did that come from? But I think that that's great, and I think looking at that is gonna just add that one more element to the development or to the depth of like who your characters are and why they are the way they are, and it might even give more depth to where he has found a way to stop that snap from the full moon, like why it is that the moon makes that happen, right? Like there's also, I think there's so many different things you can find when you go into these lores and deep dive into why these stories were created to begin with.
Yeah, there's a lot of research to be done for sure, for sure. But that makes things interesting, right?
Right.
It'll give me it'll give me something to write about. So yeah, yeah, I look forward to all that. All in good time. But yeah, and then incorporate all that into this modern Wolfman tale right here in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I look forward to it.
All right. And if you are on social media, I've seen on, I've just recently got onto Threads. I don't know much about it, but I have seen a lot of independent bookstores that have like forms for independent authors to submit their books because they only sell indie author books in their stores. So you might check there too for other avenues as far as
I
like
will. Thank you.
for ways
Yeah.
to get your words out. I don't know how to use Threads very well yet. Somebody said that it reminded them of an old AOL chat room, and I was like, yeah, that's exactly what this feels like.
I know
Which also
social
just
media.
really
It's
aged me.
social media. No, social media and everything. There's so many places right now to do. It's like where do you find time for all that, right? Twitter, X, right? Facebook. Now there's book talk, you know, and then the actual real life part of that. So it's keeping me busy. Definitely keeping me
I
busy.
will say I do like the scheduling aspect where you can schedule posts ahead of time. That makes my life so much
Yeah,
easier.
true,
Well,
true,
so
true.
to end and close up our episodes, I typically type into AI and ask it to come up with like an unhinged, like off the wall question that neither of us have time to think about or come up with an answer ahead of time. So the question it came up with is that you where did it go? You wake up tomorrow and you can only communicate through song lyrics. How are you surviving your first conversation?
That's a great question. Song lyrics, huh? God. I would take a. I would definitely have to take a ballad for that, right? A love ballad, right? It's like, uh, God, I love all kinds of. I love blues. I love funk. I love '60s rock, '70s rock. No, romance is the love is romance. Love is it's the universal language. So I think the best way, especially being married, if the person I communicate with the most is my wife, so I would have to
Right?
say love ballad, right? Yeah,
Right?
romance,
Um,
right? The best way.
oh, I am I'm an old soul or my favorite band ever is the Beatles. So I would probably go with A Day in the Life. I feel like that just kind of explains everything, like right there in one
Yeah, that's a great song. That's a great song.
I love just about everything by the Beatles, and I feel like there's a Beatles song for every situation.
I love Beatles. I love the Beatles. I love, Led Zeppelin's my favorite rock band ever. Love Led Zeppelin. I just, again, I love funk music. I love all music. I put that in. My protagonist is like that, right? He just loves all music, right? But yeah, if I were to speak, yeah, love ballad, and keep things simple.
I love that. Well, sometimes the stories that stay with us are the ones that don't follow the rules and the ones that take something familiar and make us see it differently. So, if this conversation made you rethink what a story can be or reminded you that not everything has to fit into a mold, then sit with that because that's the slow burn. And thanks for being with us on tonight's episode. So, thanks for being here.
It's been an honor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right.